this video journal, I'm going to be installing a passive pickup in one of my guitars. This particular one is a spruce top with figured nickel backs and sides. This is the pickup here. It is a Piezo passive pickup. It's about 3/32 of an inch wide and about 2 5/8 of an inch long. The first thing that you want to do before you can consider that a guitar is a good candidate for a passive guitar pickup is to make sure that there's enough saddle height so that there's enough down bearing of the strings behind the saddle, because these pickups function by the pressure of the saddle pushing down on to the pickup. So this guitar has a good candidate for it. And also you want to check and make sure that the saddle slot is wide enough to accept the pickup, which this one is. So first thing I want to do is go ahead and remove the strings and get them out of my way. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and put a little protection on the top of the guitar. I'm going to be working with tools and I don't want to drop something and ding the top of my guitar. I need access to the sound hole. If you want to put something else right through here to protect the guitar, you can. Now before I pull my saddle out of there, I'm going to take a small lead pencil and mark the back of the saddle where it enters the bridge. I'm going to check and make sure that if there's any shims under there, I need to know that. And this guitar has a shim, so I'm going to pull it out. What I'm going to need to do is reduce the height of this saddle by the thickness of my pickup. So what I'll do is I'll measure the pickup and then I'll mark a line on the bottom of the saddle, and including the shim distance, I'll come down the width of that saddle. We'll do that in a minute. Next I want to go ahead and remove my strap button. Now the endpin jack that goes in the bottom of the guitar, most of these you'll find are going to be stereo jacks. So there's going to be 3 connectors here and then your ground connection there, or your wire connection. The instructions call for a 15/32 of an inch hole. Now in order to drill that hole, there's a couple ways we can do this. I'm going to start with since this guitar already has a hole through where the strap button was located, I'm going to use this step bit, which will drill up to 12 or so different size holes, the very widest being a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to stop right here at the second to the last step on this step drill bit, which will be my 15/32 inch hole. Now if you don't have one of these, what you could do is use just a reamer, and just takes a little while to ream the hole out till you get to about that 15/32 of an inch hole. And then I'm going to switch over to a 15/32 of an inch brad point bit and drill the rest of the way through. You can just do the hole with one of these to begin with, but it's an awful scary thing to do with a bit like this. So I'll start off with my step bit and then we'll go from there. And if you got somebody to help hold the guitar, that's a good thing too. And I'm going to just go right here at my strap button hole, and very carefully, very slowly. You want to make sure too that you keep your drill at the same angle that your body is. It's really slowing down here for this install. To try to cover all the different things that you need to think about. Okay, so one thing that I just mentioned, let's make sure that our body is square to the workbench. Okay, so check it with a level like that. You want to drill your hole through the end pin and through the end pin block or through the tail block straight. You don't want to get it in there at an angle. So I know I'm square this way, and I have a bubble on my drill that will tell me when I'm level. Okay, I've gotten to my 15/32 of an inch. Make sure that my drill bit will fit in there. Let's go a little bit further. Actually, I can do that with my reamer. So make it a little bit wider at this end. Okay, carefully putting my bit into the hole and then making sure I'm level. Okay, there's our hole. Okay, with the hole drilled for the end pin jack, you need to just make sure that it'll fit through there snugly. So got a nice fit for that. The next step is going to be go ahead and drill the hole for the wire. My saddle slot is 3/32 of an inch. And I'm going to take my pickup, place it over here in my saddle slot temporarily, and just mark the location. I want to make sure that each one of my strings covers a good portion of that pickup. So really, I need to be right here at the very end of my saddle slot for my wire to go through. One little tip too, when you take your drill and you set it down, you've got a bit in it, don't set it down like this because it could fall and break your bit. Set it down like this, or go ahead and take the drill bit out of the drill when you're done using it. Now I've got to double check to make sure that my wire fits through that little hole. And that the pickup rests in the bottom of the slot. It's important to have a saddle slot that's flat and clean at the bottom as well. And the next thing I'm going to have to do is trim my saddle. Okay, so there's my saddle and then the space that was in there. So the pickup itself is about 1/16 of an inch thick. So I need to come down 1/16 of an inch minus whatever this is. Okay, so that's about 1/64 of an inch. So I want to come down right there. One easy way to do that is just to go ahead and take a little pencil like this. And measure down the width of your pickup minus your shim. And then score a line on the bottom of your saddle. And you can double check that if you have to with your calipers to make sure you're where you're supposed to be. I'll need to sand this saddle down flush to that line, which you can do by hand by taking a piece of sandpaper, lay it on a perfectly flat surface, and sanding while you count to 10 or 20, turn it around and sand to 10 or 20. I don't do it that way because I have a disc sander. So the disc sander makes quick work of this. Now that I've gotten my saddle down to its appropriate thickness, I can double check things after I get this in the slot. Got a little needle file, and I'm just going to kind of clean up the top of this hole just a little bit. Make sure there's no splinters and I get a nice flush fit. Now I'll go ahead and put the pickup in the saddle slot, and then using the saddle itself, I can just go ahead and push it on down in there. Okay, with my pickup down into the saddle slot, I can take my saddle and place it back on top of the pickup. Then I can check the line that I drew on the back of my saddle. It should be in the same spot as it was before I took everything out. So there was a shim, there was a saddle, I drew a line on the back, I sanded everything down to appropriate height, so when I put the pickup in, put the saddle back in, I should see the same, that line should meet right there where it was before. Before you finish the process of doing this to someone's guitar, go ahead and take a little eraser and erase the pencil line that was left on the top of the saddle. Make sure that nothing has gotten down on top of the saddle there, or on top of the pickup. Then go ahead and put your saddle back in. I leave the lines actually on the back of the saddle. You can't really see them, and it's a good reference if you have to do something later on. Okay, with the pickup wires coming out through the guitar, I've got them stripped back to where I need them to be, and I've got them tinned with their solder. And this is important here. Do not forget to take the little barrel that covers your jack and slide it down over your wires before you start soldering things together. It's real difficult to do that afterwards. Here's my output jack. It goes in the guitar. I need to solder the hot tip to this little short one right here in the middle. And then these two are actually grounds, as is this part here. You can check that with your multimeter. So I'm just going to move this out of my way a little bit so I can get to this tip wire, and I'm going to solder it on first. And to make it a little easier to get soldered on there, I'm just going to put a little shepherd's crook in the end of this wire that I've tinned and hook it on there. Get it to where it'll stay. You can see that. And then I'm going to just go ahead and solder that wire on first. Okay. Now that I've gotten the hot wire soldered to the tip, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of smooth this ground out just a little bit, get it out of my way, pinch those wires together. So now I've got my ground wire, and I'm just going to feed it through. Okay, and then I'll solder those. Okay. Now would be a good time to go ahead and plug this into a little amplifier, just to make sure that you've gotten your connections properly done. And then you can go ahead and finish things up. All right, now I can go ahead and put my jack in the guitar, put in my washers back on there. Okay, now I'm going to take the jack and put it down into the guitar, holding onto the washers, and insert my dowel and stick it into the end of the jack and pull it through. And if I'm lucky and I didn't mess with my washers much, I should have the right amount of the jack sticking out. Okay. That's how much we want sticking out. Now, take our outside washer and put it on there. Okay, now I can take my nut And there's a hole through the end of the jack, and that's designed for you to put a little cut-off piece of coat hanger will work. That way you can hold the jack and tighten it up. And be careful here that you don't slip off and scratch the guitar. So I'm holding the wrench way down here at the end by my fingers. By the way, that is a 1/2 inch spanner. And then we can take the strap button cover, screw it down tight. And just to make sure that we've gotten that jack in there far enough, go ahead and take a cord or jack and make sure it plugs all the way in. And it does. Now before I string everything up, I want to double check and make sure that I'm getting a good contact with that pickup. So I'm going to plug this into an amp and tap on it before I string everything back up. Well, I've gone ahead and restrung the guitar and checked the pickup. I went and got the lamp out of the other end, and we're getting a good sound coming through it. This is a passive pickup, which most manufacturers of passive pickups recommend that you use a preamp with it. So I have a preamp here, and I've got it in bypass mode. So this is just the pickup by itself going straight into the amp. With a preamp. It's without the preamp. So what the preamp does for you is flattens out your frequency response and gives you some gain before you go into your amp. There's different preamps, they can do different things. This particular one is got all kinds of tone controls and stuff like that on it, which can be really handy. But all of them I think will do a pretty good job. Anyway, there's your pickup install, passive pickup in a acoustic guitar.